Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of horror stories that you can listen to while you fall asleep. Before the video begins, let us know what time is it and where you are listening from. Also, if you have suggestion for next horror story settings, let us know in the comments. Now let us begin. It was the third week of July, deep into the kind of summer heat that makes everything feel heavy and slow. My best friend Aaron and I had planned this trip for months. A long weekend of hiking, fishing, and sleeping under the stars in the remote forests just outside Black Ridge. No phones, no internet, just us, the woods, and the quiet. We were both 24, just out of college and itching to disconnect from everything. Aaron found a spot online, not a campground, but a place marked by coordinates, a hidden patch of forest that someone swore by in a forum thread from years ago. It was supposed to be peaceful, untouched, and perfectly safe. That last part stuck with me, even though it shouldn't have mattered. We left early Friday morning and hiked nearly 3 hours off trail to get there. The place really was beautiful. Tall pines surrounded us, and a shallow creek ran nearby with just enough water to fill our bottles. The only sounds were birds, wind, and the occasional cracking branch in the distance. It felt perfect, isolated in a way that made the world feel smaller and more manageable. The first night passed uneventfully. We made a fire, cooked some ramen, told the same old stories we always did. We stayed up a little too late laughing and fell asleep to the chirping of crickets and the gentle rustling of leaves. It was the second night when things began to feel off. Around 2 a.m., I woke up needing to pee. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out of the tent, and wandered maybe 20 feet away toward the trees. The air felt wrong, colder than it had any right to be in mid-July, and unnaturally still. No insects, no frogs, no breeze. Just silence. It hit me how alone we were out there. Not just alone, unreachable. While I stood there, I thought I saw something, movement, maybe 50 feet beyond the tree line. A figure maybe. Tall, motionless, too far to make out. I told myself it was just a tree, a trick of the light, maybe even my imagination. But I didn't look away. I waited, holding my breath, watching. After what felt like a full minute, the shape turned. Not walked, turned. Like someone pivoting just enough to acknowledge they were aware of you. I panicked and stumbled back to the tent, barely remembering to zip it shut behind me. Aaron was asleep, and I didn't wake him. I told myself if it was something serious, an animal or a person, we'd know by morning. The next day I didn't mention it. We hiked, fished a little, and ate in awkward silence. I was more on edge than I wanted to admit. Aaron noticed but didn't push. That night, we doused the fire early. I lay awake, staring at the nylon ceiling of the tent, listening. I heard footsteps. Not the scurrying of small animals, human steps. Deliberate. Slow. Crunching pine needles just outside. I held my breath again, willing myself not to move. I thought I heard breathing, low and labored, like someone standing just beyond the fabric. Then nothing. Not even retreating steps. Just gone. I must have passed out from exhaustion eventually. In the morning, there were boot prints outside. Not ours. Larger. Deeper. No mistaking it. I showed Aaron, and he went pale. Neither of us had cell service, but we agreed it was time to head out, no more pretending. As we packed, Aaron noticed something else. A long, straight line carved into the dirt around our tent. Like someone had dragged a stick or knife all the way around it while we slept. A full circle. We didn't speak for a long time after that. We just packed, kept our knives close, and got the hell out. The hike back took longer because we kept stopping, looking over our shoulders, straining to hear something we hoped wasn't there. We made it to the car by sunset, locked the doors, and drove without speaking until we hit a gas station with working reception. That should have been the end of it. But 2 weeks later, I got a package in the mail. No return address, just my name handwritten on the front in sloppy capital letters. Inside was a disposable camera, the old kind with a will you click after each photo. My name was scrawled on the side again. Nothing else. I didn't touch it for days. When I finally took it to get the photos developed, the guy at the counter looked uncomfortable when he handed them back. He asked if I was okay. There were 10 photos, all of them taken in the forest. The first 5 were wide shots of our tent, taken from a distance. The angle got closer with each frame. In the 6th photo, you could see me standing outside the tent, flashlight in hand, peeing into the trees, the exact moment I thought I saw something. Photo 7 was taken from behind me. Closer. 8 and 9 were of us sleeping inside the tent. One from far, one from just a few feet away. The final photo was the worst. It was taken in daylight. A clear shot of Aaron, and me hiking back toward the car. From behind, from somewhere in the trees. We never heard a thing. I'll never forget the smell of that summer evening. Pine sap, campfire smoke, and something sour like rotting leaves clinging to the air. It was July, the kind of humid heat that makes your shirt stick to your back even after the sun dips below the horizon. We were deep in the Adirondacks, a group of 5 friends, our first camping trip since college. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks, craving the escape from my cubicle and the city's constant hum. But now, sitting here years later, I can't shake the memory of that night. It's like a splinter in my mind, sharp and infected. I need to get it out, to tell someone, even if my voice shakes. We'd picked a remote spot, a clearing by a lake that wasn't on most maps. No cell service, no other campers, just us and the wilderness. The drive up was all laughter and bad playlists, but as we hiked the last mile to the site, lugging coolers and tents, the forest felt heavy. The birds were quiet, and the trees seemed to lean in, their branches knitting together overhead. I brushed it off as city-dweller nerves. We were here to drink, swim, and forget our problems, not to overthink the scenery. By dusk, we had the fire going, beers cracked open, and Jake strumming his guitar off-key. Sarah was roasting marshmallows, her face glowing in the firelight, while Matt and Emily argued about who'd seen the bigger bear in Yellowstone years ago. I was happy, buzzed, leaning back on a log, watching sparks drift into the starry sky. That's when I first noticed it, a faint rustling in the woods, just beyond the fire's glow. I sat up, straining to hear over Jake's chords. It stopped. Probably a deer, I thought, but my skin prickled. Anyone else hear that? I asked, trying to sound casual. Hear what? Sarah tilted her head, marshmallow goo dripping onto her fingers. Like something moving out there. Matt snorted. City boys spooked already. It's just the wind, Dan. I forced a laugh, but my eyes kept darting to the tree line. The darkness seemed thicker now, like it was pressing against the firelight. I told myself to chill, took another swig of beer, and joined Emily in mocking Matt's bear story. But the rustling came again, louder, deliberate. This time, Jake stopped playing. Okay, I heard that, he said, setting his guitar down. What the hell? We all froze, listening. The sound was rhythmic, crunch, pause, crunch, like footsteps circling our camp. My heart started pounding, a dull thud in my ears. Emily grabbed Matt's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. Sarah whispered, maybe it's a raccoon? That's no raccoon, Jake muttered, standing up. He grabbed a flashlight and swung it toward the woods. The beam cut through the dark, catching glints of leaves and bark, but nothing else. The rustling stopped again. Silence, heavy and wrong, settled over us. Probably just some animal, Matt said, but his voice was tight. Let's keep the fire big, yeah? We piled on more wood, the flames crackling louder, but the warmth didn't reach the chill creeping up my spine. We tried to pick up the conversation, but it felt forced. Every snap of a twig made us flinch. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see eyes glowing in the dark. Nothing. Just shadows. Hours passed, and we decided to turn in. Safety in numbers, we agreed, so we zipped our tents close together, flashlights on, knives within reach. I shared a tent with Jake, and we lay there, whispering about what it could have been. A bear? A coyote? Neither of us believed it. Bears don't stalk like that, and coyotes don't move so slow, so careful. I barely slept, jumping at every sound, the wind, an owl, my own breathing. Morning came, gray and muggy. We crawled out, bleary-eyed, and checked the campsite. Nothing was disturbed, no tracks, no scat, no sign of anything. Relief washed over us, and we laughed it off as paranoia. Too many horror movies, Emily said, punching my arm. We spent the day swimming, fishing, and drinking, the night's fear fading under the sun. But as evening crept in, that sour smell returned, stronger, like something dead nearby. I searched the bushes, but found nothing. My stomach twisted. That night, we kept the fire roaring, but the rustling came back, closer. It wasn't circling anymore. It was approaching. Crunch, pause, crunch. My mouth went dry. Jake's flashlight shook as he aimed it at the woods. Who's there? He yelled, his voice cracking. No answer, just another step. Sarah started crying, clutching Emily. Matt grabbed a burning branch from the fire, waving it like a weapon. Show yourself, he shouted. The steps stopped. Silence again, but it felt like the forest was holding its breath. Then, from the darkness, a low whistle, human, unmistakable. My blood turned to ice. It was slow, almost a tune, like someone mocking us. Emily screamed, and we all scrambled back, tripping over logs. The whistle faded, replaced by footsteps retreating, fast, crashing through the underbrush. We didn't sleep. We sat by the fire, knives out, jumping at shadows until dawn. At first light, we packed up, barely speaking. The hike back to the car felt endless, every rustle making us spin around. We didn't talk about it on the drive home, but the tension was suffocating. I thought it was over, just a bad memory to bury. But a week later, I found something in my backpack, tucked into a side pocket I hadn't checked. A small, folded piece of paper, damp and stained, like it had been in the dirt. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a crude drawing in black ink, a stick figure with no face, standing by a tent, holding a knife. Below it, in scrawled letters, "I saw you. I haven't camped since. I can't even drive past a forest without my heart racing." The others don't talk about it. Sarah moved away, Jake avoids my calls, and Matt just changes the subject. But sometimes late at night, I hear that whistle in my head, low and mocking, and I wonder who, or what, was out there watching us. Waiting. It's been 3 years since that summer in the Adirondacks, but the memory clings to me like damp rot. The whistle, the footsteps, that faceless drawing. I thought I'd left it behind, buried in the back of my mind. But last month, I went back. God help me, I went back. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to prove it was just a bad night, a trick of the woods. Maybe I thought facing it would make the nightmares stop. Now sitting here, my hands still shaking, I need to tell someone what happened. I need to get it out before it eats me alive. It was June this time, the air thick with that same sticky heat, the kind that makes your clothes cling like a second skin. I went alone. None of the others, Jake, Sarah, Matt, or Emily, would even talk about the trip anymore, let alone join me. I didn't tell them I was going. I packed light, a tent, a knife, a flashlight, and a cheap trail cam I bought online. I told myself I'd set it up, catch whatever was out there on video, and prove it was just an animal, or a person, anything I could explain. The drive up felt like a funeral procession, my stomach knotting tighter with every mile. The forest looked the same, tall pines, their needles carpeting the ground, the lake glinting through the trees. I found the same clearing, though it felt smaller, more overgrown. The fire pit was still there, charred rocks half buried in dirt. The air smelled wrong again, that sour, decayed leaf stench sharper now. I set up my tent fast, my hands clumsy, and rigged the trail cam on a tree facing the clearing. I checked it twice, making sure it was recording. I wasn't taking chances. By dusk, I had a fire going, smaller than last time. I sat on a stump, clutching my knife, listening to the woods. The birds were quiet again, the silence thick enough to choke on. I kept glancing at the trail cam, its red light blinking like an unblinking eye. Nothing happened for hours. Just me, the fire, and the dark. I tried to eat, but the granola bar tasted like ash. My eyes burned from staring into the trees, searching for movement. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I'd watch the footage tomorrow and laugh at how jumpy I was. Then I heard it, a snap, sharp and close, like a branch breaking under weight. My heart lurched. I gripped the knife tighter, my knuckles white. "Who's there?" I called, my voice thinner than I wanted. No answer. Just another snap, then a rustle, slow and deliberate, like something dragging through the underbrush. I swung my flashlight around, the beam shaking in my hand. It caught nothing but trees and shadows. The rustling stopped, but the silence was worse, heavy like the air itself was watching me. I stayed up all night, feeding the fire, my back against the stump so nothing could sneak up. Every sound, a twig snapping, leaves shifting, made my pulse spike. I kept checking the trail cam, half expecting to see it smashed or gone. It was still there, red light steady. By dawn, I was exhausted, my eyes gritty, but I felt a flicker of relief. I'd made it through the night. I packed up, grabbed the trail cam, and hiked out, my legs heavy but my mind racing. I didn't look back. At home, I locked the door, drew the curtains, and plugged the trail cam into my laptop. My hands were clammy as I opened the footage. The first hour was nothing, just the clearing, the fire flickering, me sitting like a statue. Then, around 1 a.m., something moved at the edge of the frame. I leaned closer, my breath catching. It was faint, just a shadow, but it wasn't an animal. Too tall, too upright. It stood there, just outside the firelight, motionless. I paused the video, my heart hammering. The shape was blurry, but it looked human, thin, hunched, head tilted like it was listening. I played the next clip. The figure was closer now, still in the shadows, but I could make out a vague outline, long arms, no clear face. It didn't move like a person. It swayed, slow and unnatural, like it was testing the edge of the light. My mouth went dry. I skipped to the next clip, my finger trembling on the mouse. The figure was gone, but the camera had caught something else. My tent, unzipped, the flap hanging open. I hadn't left it like that. I know I hadn't. The final clip was time-stamped 3:17 a.m. The fire was low, just embers. I was slumped against the stump, half asleep. And there, at the corner of the frame, was the figure again, closer, almost in the clearing. It didn't move, just stood there, staring at me. I could feel its gaze through the screen, like a weight on my chest. Then slowly it raised one arm, pointing at the camera. The video cut out. I sat there, frozen, my laptop screen dark. My apartment felt too small, the walls too close. I checked the locks twice, then 3 times. I didn't sleep that night or the next. A few days later, I found something else. In my backpack, shoved deep in a pocket, was a small, folded piece of paper. My hands shook as I opened it. Another drawing like the one from 3 years ago. Same faceless stick figure, same scrawled handwriting. But this time, the words were different. You came back. I burned the paper in my sink, watching the edges curl and blacken. I haven't told anyone, not Jake, not Sarah, not even a therapist. They'd think I'm crazy, and maybe I am. But I know what I saw on that footage. I know what was out there, watching, waiting. And I know it's not done with me. The old cabin stood on a forgotten patch of land, nestled deep in the Redwood National Park. It wasn't on any map I owned, just a vague spot marked with an X on a faded, hand-drawn sketch my grandfather had left me. He'd always spoken of it with a strange mix of reverence and fear, a place where he'd spent a particularly harsh winter long ago. When I decided to spend a week there, alone, that summer, I told myself it was about connecting with his memory, about finding some peace away from the relentless hum of city life. I remember the exact moment the peace began to unravel. It was a Saturday, the second day of my stay. The morning had been perfect, the air cool and thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient trees. I'd spent hours exploring the surrounding woods, marveling at the colossal redwoods that pierced the sky, their sheer size making me feel impossibly small. But as the afternoon wore on, a peculiar stillness descended. The usual chatter of birds faded, replaced by an oppressive silence that pressed in from all sides. I told myself it was just the forest settling, but a prickle of unease started to crawl up my neck. The cabin itself was a relic, built from rough-hewn logs, its windows cloudy with age. Inside, the air was perpetually cool, even in the summer heat, carrying the faint, lingering scent of wood smoke and something else, something indefinable, like old paper and forgotten dreams. That evening, as dusk bled into night, the silence outside became an active presence, a heavy blanket that muffled every sound. I lit the old oil lamp, its flickering glow casting dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and stretch in the corners of the single room. I tried to read, but my eyes kept darting to the windows, to the impenetrable blackness beyond. Every creak of the old wood, every rustle of leaves outside, made me jump. I told myself it was just the cabin settling, just the wind. But the fear was a cold knot in my stomach. Sleep was impossible. I lay on the creaking cot, wrapped in a thin blanket, my ears straining. The sounds weren't distinct, not at first. Just faint, almost imperceptible shifts in the oppressive silence. A soft thud, like something heavy being moved, then a dragging sound, barely audible, as if something was being pulled across the forest floor. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the otherwise still night. I tried to rationalize it, a falling branch, an animal. But the sounds were too rhythmic, too deliberate. They seemed to circle the cabin, moving closer, then receding, then returning. I imagined eyes watching me from the darkness, unseen, unblinking. The air in the cabin grew colder, a bone-chilling dampness that seeped through my clothes. The next morning, the exhaustion was a physical weight. I forced myself to go outside, to prove to myself that it was all in my head. The forest looked the same, majestic and indifferent. But the feeling of being watched persisted, a constant pressure on the back of my neck. I decided to hike further than I had before, to explore the area behind the cabin, hoping to find some explanation for the unsettling sounds. The terrain grew rougher, the trees denser, and the sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy. It was eerily quiet here, even more so than around the cabin. And then I saw it. Tucked away in a small, overgrown clearing, almost completely hidden by a tangle of ferns and fallen logs, was a small, dilapidated lean-to. It was crudely constructed, just a few branches lashed together with rope, covered with a tattered tarp. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't seen this on any of my previous explorations. As I approached, a foul metallic smell hit me, thick and cloying. It was the smell of decay, of something long dead. My stomach churned. Hesitantly, I pushed aside the flimsy tarp. The sight inside made me gasp, a choked, horrified sound that echoed in the silent woods. The lean-to was not empty. Strewn across the dirt floor were various items, all old, all stained, all deeply disturbing. There were rusted tools, a shovel, a pickaxe, a saw, all caked with dried mud and something dark, almost black. And then I saw the notebooks. Several of them, their covers warped and water-damaged, their pages filled with cramped, frantic handwriting. I picked one up, my hands trembling. The ink was faded, but the words were still legible. They were entries, dated years apart, detailing observations of the forest, of animals, and then slowly, chillingly of people. Descriptions of visitors, of experiments, of collecting specimens. My blood ran cold. I dropped the notebook as if it were burning me. The metallic smell was overpowering now, and I finally understood what it was. Blood. Dried old blood. My gaze fell upon a corner of the lean-to, where a pile of what I had initially dismissed as old rags lay. But they weren't rags. They were clothes. Torn, stained, and disturbingly small. Children's clothes. And then, partially obscured by a fallen branch, I saw it. A shallow depression in the earth, freshly disturbed, covered with a thin layer of pine needles. And sticking out from beneath them, a single, small porcelain doll's arm. It was pristine, untouched by the decay, its tiny hand still perfectly formed. I didn't scream. I couldn't. A cold, suffocating terror clamped down on me. The sounds from the previous night, the dragging, the thudding, they weren't animals. They were something else entirely. I backed away slowly, my eyes fixed on the lean-to, on the disturbed earth, on the doll's arm. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee. But as I turned to leave, my foot snagged on something. I stumbled, catching myself on a tree trunk. And as I looked down, I saw it. Etched into the bark, barely visible, were a series of crude, jagged lines. A tally mark. And beneath it, another. And another. Dozens of them. Each one representing what? I didn't wait to find out. I ran. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached. Not daring to look back, the image of the lean-to, the smell, and the silent, counting trees burned into my mind. I never went back to the cabin, and I never will. There's something about camping that brings out the kid in people. The smell of firewood, the hiss of water boiling in a tin pot, the way your clothes cling to your back from the heat. It makes everything feel like summer break again. That's what we were chasing when we booked the site. A break. Something simple. Something safe. We were 6, me, my girlfriend Rhea, our friends Kyle and Jess, and Kyle's younger brother Luke with his girlfriend Lena. 2 cars packed with gear, and a long weekend ahead. We found the spot through a blog that rated it as remote but accessible. A place called Elder's Hollow, tucked behind the edge of a national park, just far enough off the maps to avoid crowds. The ranger station we passed on the way and looked abandoned, boarded windows, rusted mailbox. No one stopped us. No one checked anything. Just one old laminated sign stapled to a post. Stay within designated perimeter after dark. Wildlife hazard. It barely registered. The first day was great. Hot, dry air. Tall trees that filtered the sun into golden dust. A wide clearing with room for our tents and a fire pit someone had left behind. We set up camp, cracked beers, grilled hot dogs. That night, we stayed up late under the stars, laughing loud, carefree. Rhea and I took a walk around the clearing before bed, hand in hand, our flashlight sweeping the forest edge. That's when we saw it, a line of stakes in the dirt. Wooden, old, weather-worn. They formed a wide circle around the campground. Each stake had a frayed red ribbon tied around the top. We thought it was weird, maybe something the park had set up as a boundary. I joked it looked like a fence to keep something in, not out. Rhea didn't laugh. The next morning, Luke swore he heard something breathing outside his tent. We chalked it up to coyotes or raccoons. Jess joked that maybe he snored so loud he woke himself up. But I remembered the stake line. I didn't mention it. That night, something changed. We were all sitting around the fire when we heard rustling. Heavy, not fast like a deer or squirrel. Something large. We all froze, heads turning toward the trees. The noise stopped. We scanned the dark, flashlights cutting through leaves and shadows, but saw nothing. Then, from the opposite side of the clearing, another crack. It was circling us. Kyle shouted, trying to scare it off. We stood together, flashlights pointed outward. After a minute of silence, we heard it again, farther away this time. Eventually it faded. We debated leaving, but it was late, and packing up 6 people in the dark didn't seem smart. We agreed to keep the fire going and take turns keeping watch. I volunteered for the first shift. Around 3 a.m., as I sat there alone with the dying embers, I heard something again. Not just footsteps, breathing, deep, steady. I grabbed the light and aimed it into the woods. That's when I saw it. Not an animal, a person, or something that used to be one. Tall, gaunt, shirtless, skin pale and stretched tight like wax paper. It was standing just outside the stake line, not crossing, just waiting. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I sat there frozen as it tilted its head, almost curious. Its eyes reflected red in the light. Then it stepped back and vanished into the trees. At sunrise, I told the others. No one laughed. Not this time. We packed. Fast. But when we tried to drive out, we hit a problem. The road we came in on, a single narrow dirt trail, was gone. Not blocked. Not overgrown. Gone. As if no one had driven on it in years. We backtracked, checked GPS. No signal. The map showed nothing. Just green. We weren't where we were supposed to be. Somehow, we weren't even on a map anymore. We agreed to follow the sun west, toward the main road. Hiking would take hours, but it was our only option. By noon, we found something. A chain-link fence, rusted and half-collapsed, stretching in both directions. On it hung a single sign, faded and cracked. Perimeter breach, site closed, 2008 incident. Behind us, we heard the sound again. Footsteps. Deliberate. Getting closer. We ran. We ran for hours. We didn't make it back to the main highway until nearly sunset. Covered in scratches and dirt, dehydrated and terrified. We flagged down a trucker, who gave us water and radioed for help. Here's the part one can't shake. When the authorities came, they told us no such campground existed. Elders Hollow was shut down 16 years ago after several disappearances. The ranger station had been defunct since 2010. The road in, washed out over a decade earlier. But we were there. We camped. We saw the stakes, heard the footsteps, saw the figure. And here's what haunts me the most. Kyle wears a smartwatch that tracks his steps. After we returned, he checked the data. On the second night, between 2 and 4 a.m., when we were supposedly asleep, his watch recorded 231 steps. A full perimeter walk around our camp. He doesn't remember getting up, but someone did. The summer sun beat down on the old dirt road, baking the asphalt until it shimmered like a mirage. We were heading to my uncle's old fishing cabin, a place I'd only heard whispers about in hushed family conversations. It was deep in the heart of the Redwood National Park, miles from the nearest paved road, and even further from cell service. My cousin Liam had inherited it, and this trip was meant to be a bonding experience, a getting away from it all kind of adventure. I remember the exact moment the adventure turned into something else, something cold and sharp that settled in my gut. It was a Thursday, the 4th day of our trip. The first few days had been idyllic, fishing, hiking, nights spent by a roaring fire sharing stories. But that afternoon, as we set out for what Liam called the secret spot, a legendary fishing hole rumored to hold giant trout, the air thickened. Not with humidity, but with an unsettling stillness. The usual rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, all faded into an unnatural silence that pressed in from the ancient trees. The cabin itself was a ramshackle affair, built from rough-hewn logs that had long since warped and settled. Inside, the air was perpetually cool, carrying the faint, lingering scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet that I couldn't quite place. That evening, as dusk bled into night, the oppressive silence outside became palpable. We sat on the porch, nursing warm beers, the single lantern casting a meager glow against the encroaching darkness. Liam, usually boisterous, was uncharacteristically quiet, his eyes scanning the tree line. The only sounds were the distant hoot of an owl and the frantic thumping of my own heart. Sleep was a joke. I lay on the creaking cot, wrapped in a thin sleeping bag, every nerve end screaming. The sound started subtly at first. A faint scratching like branches against the cabin wall, but too regular, too rhythmic. Then, a soft thud, as if something was being placed down gently just outside my window. My imagination, usually my best friend, had become my worst enemy, conjuring images of unseen eyes watching from the impenetrable darkness. I told myself it was just small animals, raccoons, maybe a fox. But the sounds were too deliberate, too human-like in their cadence. The air in the cabin grew colder, a bone-chilling dampness that seeped through my clothes, no matter how tightly I pulled the sleeping bag around me. The next morning, the exhaustion was a crushing weight. Liam looked as haggard as I felt. We tried to shake off the unease, forcing ourselves to go about our usual routine, convincing ourselves we were just overtired and heading in isolation. We spent the day by the river, the rhythmic casting and the gentle gurgle of the water temporary calm. But even then, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, a prickle of dread tracing its way down my spine. The forest felt different, heavier. The shadows seemed to lengthen prematurely, clinging to the tree trunks like grasping fingers. That evening, as dusk bled into night, the unsettling feeling intensified. We built a roaring campfire, its flames dancing against the approaching darkness, a desperate attempt to ward off whatever was lurking out there. The crackle of the burning would be the only sound for a long time, until Liam, ever the practical man, started telling a story about a bear he was found in the previous trip. His words were meant to be reassuring, to normalize the sounds of the wilderness. But as he spoke, I heard it, a faint whisper, just beyond the reach of the firelight. It was indistinct, like a breath, or a sigh, carried on a non-existent breeze. I froze, straining to hear it again. Liam paused, his eyes moving down. He heard it too. He sat there, frozen, listening. The whispering started again, a little clearer this time, a low, guttural murmur that sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't an animal sound. It was almost human, a distorted stretch, like a voice echoing from the body of the deep ground. We didn't move, barely breathe. The whispering grew louder, closer, and then a faint scraping sound, like something dragging across the ground, just outside the perimeter of our camp. Liam slowly reached for the axe and kept on the fire. His hand was shaking. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumming in the otherwise silent night. And then silence. Deafening, absolute silence that was somehow worse than the sound. We waited, our muscles tensed, our eyes darting into the inky blackness. Minutes stretched into eternity. Just as the tension threatened to snap, a twig snapped directly behind our feet. We both jumped, spinning around. There was nothing there, just the impenetrable darkness and the scent of damp earth. We didn't sleep at all that night. We huddled by the dying embers of the fire, listening, our nerves frayed from the unbroken. When the first hint of dawn appeared, we, hesitantly gray in the eastern sky, we packed our gear with frantic, clumsy movement. We left everything we could, just to move faster. The whispers, the scraping, the feeling of being watched, they had shattered our sense of security. As we stumbled down the trail, the sun finally breaking through the trees, casting long, diffusing shadows, I glanced back at our abandoned campsite. And that's when I saw it. On the ground, near where our tent had been, etched into the soft earth, footprints. Not animal tracks, not human. They were elongated, oddly shaped, like someone had dragged their bare feet through the dirt, but the toes were splayed, too many of them, and the heel was almost non-existent. And intertwined with those terrifying movements, faint but unmistakable, was a pattern of shallow, parallel lines. Like something had been dragged, something heavy, something broken. Liam and I exchanged a look of pure, unadulterated horror. We didn't need to say anything. We both knew. The metallic smell in the cabin, the whispered sound, the dragging. It wasn't an animal. It was a person, or what was left of him. And the tracks indicated they were still very much there, and had been watching us all along. We ran, and I haven't been able to close my eyes in the dark since. The oppressive heat of the Nepalese summer clung to everything, a suffocating blanket woven from humidity and the relentless glare of the sun. It was late July, and the air in Taloktama was thick with the promise of thunderstorms that never quite fell. That's why we decided on a foothill just shy of the highway. A week of pure, unadulterated nature, and so my brother, Rohan, went off. I remember the exact moment the first tendrils of my nose began to begin. It was a Tuesday, the third day of our trip. The morning had been glorious, all crisp air, and scent of damp earth after a deep, forgotten river. We hiked to a secluded waterfall, the kind of place you see in postcards, all shimmering mist and humid. But on the way back to our campsite, as the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, something shifted. Our campsite was tucked away, far from the main trail. We'd chosen it specifically for its isolation, a decision I've regretted every day since. As we approached, the silence fell, not the peaceful quiet of nature, but a heavy, expectant one. The usual chorus of cicadas was absent, and even the rustle of leaves seemed muted. I told myself it was just the evening drawing in, the world settling down for the night. But my gut twisted. That night, sleep was a battle. Every snap of the quilt, every rustle outside the tent, amplified itself with a single monster. I kept telling myself it was just an animal, a deer, a wild dog. But the sounds were deliberate, too close, like something was circling. Rohan snored beside me, lifeless, and I envied his pain. I lay there, rigid, my eyes wide open, straining to pierce the darkness beyond the thin line on the dusting. The air grew cold despite the summer heat, a strange, unnatural chill that seemed to seep into my bones. I remember pulling my sleeping bag tighter around me, as if it could offer any real protection. The next morning, the unease was still there, a sour taste in my mouth. We tried to shake it off, convincing ourselves we were just overtired and letting our imaginations run wild. We spent the day fishing in a nearby stream, the rhythmic casting and the gentle gurgle of the water at the soothing dawn. But even then, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, a prickle of red tracing toward my spine. The woods felt different everywhere. The shadows seemed to lengthen prematurely, turning to the tree trunks like grasping fingers. That evening, as dusk bled into night, the unsettling feeling intensified. We built a roaring campfire, its flames dancing against the approaching darkness, a desperate attempt to ward off whatever was lurking outside. The crackle of the burning wood was the only sound for a long time, until Rohan, ever the practical one, started telling a story about a leopard he'd encountered on a previous trip in the forest. His words were meant to be reassuring, to normalize the sounds of the wilderness. But as he spoke, I heard it, a faint whisper, just beyond the reach of the fire. It was indistinct, like a breath or a sigh, carried on a non-existent breeze. I froze, straining to hear it again. Rohan paused, his eyes meeting mine. He heard it too. He sat there, frozen, listening. The whispering started again, a little clearer this time, a low, guttural murmur that sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't an animal sound. It was almost human, a distorted stretch, like a voice echoing from the bottom of the throat. He didn't move, barely breathed. The whispering grew louder, closer, and then a faint scraping sound, like something dragging across the ground, just outside the perimeter of our camp. Rohan slowly reached for the flickering match and kept on fire. His hand was shaking. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in an otherwise silent night. And then silence. A deafening, absolute silence that was somehow worse than the sound. We waited, our muscles tense, our eyes darting into the inky blackness. Minutes stretched into eternity. Just as the tension threatened to snap, a twig snapped directly behind our feet. We both jumped, spinning around. There was nothing there, just the impenetrable darkness and the scent of damp earth and time. We didn't sleep at all that night. We huddled by the dying embers of the fire, listening, our nerves frayed beyond recognition. When the first hint of dawn appeared, a weak, hesitant gray in the eastern sky, we packed our gear with frantic, clumsy movement. We left everything we could, just to move faster. The whispers, the scraping, the feeling of being watched, they had shattered our sense of security. As we stumbled down the trail, the sun finally breaking through the trees, passing along, choosing shadows, I glanced back at our abandoned campsite. And that's when I saw it. On the ground, near where our tent had been, etched into the soft earth. Not animal tracks, not human. They were elongated, oddly shaped, like someone had dragged their bare feet through the dirt. The toes were sprayed, too many of them, and the heel was almost non-existent. And intertwined with those terrifying movements, faint but unmistakable, was a pattern of shallow, parallel lines. Like something had been dragged, something heavy, something broken, and then a small, glinting object caught my eye, half buried in the fresh earth next to the strange place. It was a single tarnished silver earring, intricately carved with a design I immediately recognized. A traditional Nepalese symbol, one my grandmother used to wear. It was from a set, and the other one, the matching piece, was still in Rohan's small, open backpack, lying carelessly on top of his spare shirt, right where he'd left it when he'd changed earlier that morning. It wasn't possible. It just wasn't possible. Yet bear with me. The earring was identical. We ran faster than we thought humanly possible, the realization, cold and stark, that whatever had been out there, whatever had been watching us, was not just in the wilderness. It had been with us all along, and it knew us. I used to work part-time at a summer campground in my village town. Nothing glamorous, mostly cleanup duty and running a check. The place was called Hollow Creek Campground, about 40 minutes from town, nestled between two bridges where cell service died the second we passed the earthquake shot. The sites were numbered, spaced out across a gravel route. There were 15 in total, but the first three sat a bit farther from the rest, just across a small wooden footpath. Most campers avoided those early sites, too close to the creek, too shady, and apparently too quiet at night. Guests always asked for spots 4 to 12. One weekend in late July, a man arrived alone. He was older, maybe mid-50s, still alive. Said his name was Marcus. He had one of those dull gray nylon tents with a single decker bag. Paid in cash. No car, just showed up from the tree line as if he'd walked there from somewhere else. I asked if he needed help getting set up. He smiled and said no, requested pitch 3 specifically. That was unusual. I watched him walk across the footbridge, a slow, even pace, never looking back. That night, he stayed in the ranger cabin like I always did. It was part of the job, one staff member on site every night. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to static on the old radio used to monitor emergency channels. Usually it was dead quiet, but now it was crackling like someone was pressing a button over and over without speaking. I waited, then through the static of the voice. Pitch 3, he said. That was it, just those words. I sat up, heart hammering. I tried to respond, but the radio had gone dead again. I put on my jacket, grabbed the flashlight, and crossed the campground toward the bridge. Pitch 3 was dark. No fire, no lantern, just that pale gray tent, half-lit, motionless. I called out, but no answer. I approached slowly, aiming my flashlight at the flash. Inside, the tent was empty. No bag, no sleeping roll, no man, just a neatly folded note placed in the center. I didn't touch it at first, just stared. Eventually I picked it up. One line, written in thin, messy handwriting. Don't follow the man who doesn't drink. I left the tent as it was and walked back toward the cabin. About halfway there, I turned back and froze. A figure stood at the entrance of the footbridge, not moving, not speaking, just watching. He was tall, dressed in gray windbreak with his back. I couldn't see his face in the dark, but I could see the shine of his eyes. Not blinking, not once. I held my flashlight toward him, and he stepped back into the trees without a sound. The next morning, pitch 3 was completely empty. No tent, no note, nothing. I checked the sign-in sheet. Marcus's name was still there, written in my own handwriting, but the line below it was scribbled over, like someone had tried to erase another name of him. We weren't supposed to let people camp without ID, but it wasn't unusual for older guests to play catch and skip the formality. Still, I filed a report and flagged pitch 3 as closed for maintenance, so no one else was looking for it. That should have been the end of it, but a week later, I was working with guests and family. The parents and a little girl, maybe 10 years old. They had a reservation for pitch 6, but the girl kept staring at the old trail map behind her. When I asked if she was okay, she said, "Is that where the man with the no eyes lived?" Her parents laughed nervously, said she'd been telling stories since the last campground we visited. That night, I checked the guest log for that other campground, the one they'd visited before coming here. It had been shut down for over a year. The log had no record of the family, but it did have a handwritten note, copied exactly from the one I found on the phone. Don't follow the man who doesn't drink. I don't work there anymore. I quit after the season ended, and I've never been back. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed with the lights off and my phone charging beside me, I catch something in the mirror. Just outside the glass, where the street light doesn't quite reach. A silhouette. Tall. Still. Watching. And even in the dark, I can tell. He doesn't blink. The fence in Cherokee National Forest. I was 19 the summer I worked in Tennessee, helping maintain backcountry trails in Cherokee National Forest. It was one of those conservation gigs you take when you want to be outdoors and forget about college, bills, or whatever you left behind in the city. We were a team of 6, all young, all sunburned, all a little too confident. Our job was to clear brush, reroute footpaths, repair damaged sections of trail, and make sure the remote campsites stayed usable. We moved around a lot, sleeping in tents wherever the forest allowed. The ranger in charge, an older guy named Mike, gave us a map on our first day and circled certain zones of the day. "Don't go beyond these areas," he said, tapping the circle near a faded north. "Some parts aren't safe, unstable ground, wildlife issues, and some spots people just don't come back to." We all laughed. It sounded like a scare tactic, Maybe something to keep young kids from wandering too far off the path. But I remembered the way he said it, not stern, not joking. Just quiet. One weekend, Milt had to leave for a funeral, and we were given permission to camp on our own little site called Flat Hollow, a rarely used spot halfway up the mountain. We had 2 days worth of work to do clearing the old fire trail, so we set up camp early and planned to get moving at sunrise. Around dusk, I noticed something odd just past the clearing. It was maybe 5 feet tall, made of old wire and bent metal stakes, almost invisible when the ground was dark. It didn't run straight. It weaved between trees and boulders, following no logical line. What really got me was that it wasn't enclosing anything. It wasn't blocking off land or separating property. It was just there, twisting and looping through the earth. I told the other, Kyle, our so-called leader, thought it was part of an old property line in the logging days. Someone else joked that maybe it was to keep something out, or in. That night was quiet, until about 1:30 a.m., when we all woke up to the sound of metal creaking. At first, I thought it was a tree groaning in the wind, but then I heard it again, not with metal, like pressure being applied slowly to wire connections. Dragging sound, then snapping. We got up and turned on our headlights. Nothing. No animals. No wind. The night air was heavy and still. In the morning, we found one of the fence posts bent flat to the ground. Not just rusted, as we were calling it. Bent, like something had pushed down on it from above. I ran my hand along the top of the post. It was warm. Warmer than the air. Almost like it had been touched recently. Kyle shrugged it off. Deer probably leaned on it. Big ones up here, but no deer I'd ever seen that steel. We tried to work that day, but the woods fell off. We heard noises, distant, scattered, and once around noon, a deep thump that shook the ground beneath our feet. Birds scattered. Everything went silent for hours after that. That night, the temperature dropped hard, down into the floor. In July, we huddled in sleeping bags, barely speaking. Around 3 a.m., the noises came back. This time closer. Footsteps. Slow. Crunchy leaves. Then metal again. The wire twanging in the road. I peeked out of my tent. A tall figure stood by the bent fence post, silhouetted by the moon. Not an animal. Too still. No gear, no backpack. Just standing there, as if waiting for something. Its arms hung at its sides, and it didn't move. Not once. I didn't even blink. I just watched, frozen. Then it stepped over the post. Not climbed. Stepped. Like it didn't care about boundaries. I backed into my sleeping bag and zipped it up to my neck like that was anything. In the morning, no one said anything. But we all had the same look, pale, tired, shaking. One of the girls, Tasha, started crying silently while packing her gear. When Milt came back that evening, I told him what we saw. He didn't question us, didn't roll his eyes, just nodded and said, "You stayed near the old boundary, didn't you?" He said yes. He sat down on a rock and rubbed his hands together, like someone about to say something he didn't know. That fence was put up in the 50s by surveyors, he said. No one really knows who paid for it. Locals called it the peak line. We thought it was a joke at first. Then hikers started vanishing on Flat Hollow, always alone, never in a group. People started avoiding it. Then the Forest Service pulled the site like an official matter. No one asked why. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're lucky you weren't alone." He told us not to talk about it. Said writing it in a report would get the site flagged and we'd lose our job. That was 8 years ago. A few weeks back, I looked up Flat Hollow out of curiosity. It doesn't show up on any modern trail guide, but on a blog from 2007, I found a post by someone who camped there alone. The post ended mid-sentence. The last photo on the page showed the edge of the fence, twisted wire, bent post, and what looked like a man stepping over it. There were no further updates. No responses to the comments asking what happened. No one ever confirmed who posted it in the first place. The humid air hung heavy and still, thick, suffocating blanket that pressed down on everything. It was late July in rural Georgia, and the cicadas hummed a relentless, nerve-playing song from dawn to dusk. That's why we decided on the old family cabin, nestled deep in Chattahoochee National Forest. My cousin Mark and I figured a week of untouched wilderness would be the perfect escape from the sweat of the city. I remember the exact moment of peace began to arrive. It was a Tuesday, the third day of our trip. The morning had been glorious, all crisp air, and the scent of pine needles raining in the sun. We hiked to a hidden swimming hole, kind you only find if someone tells you, all food, clear water, and send out the dark. But on the way back to the cabin, the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in fiery renders and deep purple, something shifting. Our cabin was tucked away, far from any paved road, a decision we'd made specifically for its isolation. It was a ramshackle place, built from rough-hewn logs that had long since broken and settled. As we approached, the silence fell, not the peaceful quiet of nature, but a heavy, expectant tone. The usual chorus of cicadas was absent, and even the rustle of leaves seemed muted. I told myself it was just the evening drawing room, the world settling down for me. But my gut twisted. That night, sleep was a battle. Every snap of a twig, every rustle outside the thin walls of the cabin, amplified itself into something monstrous. I kept telling myself it was just an animal, deer or raccoon. But the sounds were deliberate, too close, like something was circling. Mark snored beside me, oblivious, and I envied his peace. I lay there rigid, my eyes wide open, straining to pierce the darkness beyond the blinding window. The air grew cold despite the summer heat, a strange, unnatural chill that seemed to sink into my bones. I remember pulling my thin blanket tighter around me, as if it could offer me a little protection. The next morning, the unease was still there, a sour taste in my mouth. We tried to shake it off, convincing ourselves we were just overtired and letting our imagination run wild. We spent the day fishing in a nearby stream, the rhythmic casting and the gentle gurgle of the water was soothing me. But even then, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, a trickle of thread tracing its way down the stream. The woods felt different from me. The shadows seemed to lengthen prematurely, clinging to the tree trunks like grasping fingers. That evening, as dusk bled into night, an unsettling feeling intensified. We built a roaring campfire outside the cabin, its flames dancing against the approaching darkness, a desperate attempt to ward off whatever was lurking in it. The crackle of the burning was the only sound for a long time, until Mark, ever the practical one, started telling a story about a black bear he'd encountered on a previous trip to the swamp. His words were meant to be reassuring, to normalize the sounds of the movement. But as he spoke, I heard it, a faint whisper, just beyond the reach of the firelight. It was indistinct, like a breath or a sigh, carried on a non-existent wind. I froze, straining to hear it again. Mark paused, his eyes moving around. He heard it too. He sat there frozen, listening. The whispering started again, a little clearer this time, a low, guttural murmur that sent shivers down his spine. It wasn't an animal sound. It was almost human, but distorted, stretched, like a voice echoing from the body of the human well. He didn't move, barely breathe. The whispering grew louder, closer, and then a faint scraping sound, like something dragging across the ground, just outside the perimeter of our camp. Mark slowly reached for the old axe and kept it on fire. His hand was shaking. My heart hammered against my ribs, frantic drumbeats in the otherwise silent night. And then silence. A deafening, absolute silence that was somehow worse than the sound. We waited, our muscles tense, our eyes darting into the inky blackness. Minutes stretched into eternity. Just as the tension threatened to snap, a twig snapped directly behind the cabin. We both jumped, spinning around. There was nothing there, just the impenetrable darkness and the scent of damp earth and pine. We didn't sleep at all that night. We huddled by the dying embers of the fire inside the cabin, listening, our nerves frayed in our imagination. When the first hint of dawn appeared, a weak, hesitant gray in the eastern sky, we packed our gear, frantic, and we left everything we could, just to move faster. The whispers, the scraping, the feeling of being watched, they had shattered our sense of security. As we stumbled down the overgrown path, the sun finally breaking through the trees, casting long, diffusing shadows, I glanced back at the cabin, at the small patch of disturbed earth just beyond the first stretch. And that's when I saw it. On the ground, near where the sounds had seemed to originate, etched into the soft earth were footprints. Not animal tracks, not human. They were elongated, oddly shaped, like someone had dragged their bare feet through the dirt. But the toes were straight, too many of them, and the heel was almost non-existent. And intertwined with those terrifying imprints, faint but unmistakable, was a pattern of shallow, parallel lines. Like something had been dragged, something heavy, something broken. And then, my gaze settled on a small, dark object pressed into the fresh mud beside the ground. It was a single, tarnished brass button, the kind used on old work overalls. It was familiar, too familiar. It looked exactly like one missing from the old, patched pair of overalls my grandfather had always worn in our cabin, the ones he'd supposedly left me decades ago. My grandfather, who passed away 15 years prior, and who'd been buried an hour's drive from here. Mark saw it too, his face draining with color. The cabin door, left ajar in our hasty escape, seemed to creep open a little wider behind us, revealing only impenetrable shadow within. We ran, the forest pressing in, a terrible realization of looming in my mind. Whatever had been out there, whatever had been watching us, wasn't just in the building. It was something that had been here before, and it had found its way back. Dry Lake. There's an old campground in northern Arizona that barely shows up on GPS locals call it Dry Lake, even though the lake has been nothing but cracked dirt and sun-baked drifted for decades. No water, no shade, just a flat basin surrounded by low hills and cliffs. It used to be popular in the 80s before the water dried up and the state stopped maintaining the site. Now it's just a wide open space with a few leftover concrete fire rooms, rusted posts, and a faded wooden sign arranged for fence. Camp at your own risk. There are no services behind this camp. I went there last summer with two friends, Matt and Shay. We were road tripping from Colorado to California and wanted to spend the night somewhere off the grid. Matt had read about Dry Lake on the forum for backcountry camping. Said it was eerie but peaceful, good for stargazing. We figured one night wouldn't hurt. We got there late in the afternoon. It was hot, dry, and completely silent. No insects, no birds. Just that kind of dead air you only find in desert places. Like everything's holding its breath. We pitched a tent beside one of the old fire pits, cracked open beers, and watched the sun fall behind the hill. Around sunset, I noticed something strange. About a quarter-mile out, near the center of the lake bed, there was a hole, perfectly round, maybe 6 feet across. Not natural, easy, just a dark, dry void in the earth, surrounded by cracked mountains. I pointed it out, and Matt said maybe it was an old well or a collapsed fire pit. Shay thought it was weird and told us not to mess with it. But we did. Of course we did. Matt and I walked out to it before the light disappeared. The ground cracked under our boots with every step. The hole was deeper than it looked. We couldn't see the bottom, and when Matt dropped a rock into it, we didn't hear it hit anything. Just silence. There was something unsettling about how neat it was. Like someone had carved it out, not erased. Around the rim were strange markings in the dirt. Not symbols, not writing, just scrapes, deep and uneven, like someone had clawed at the edge or paint on out. We went back to camp. Shay was pissed we got so close. She kept asking if we touched it. I told her no. She didn't believe me. That night, the wind picked up. The kind that howls through dry grass and makes your tent flap hard enough to keep it from sinking. I was still awake around 2 a.m. when I heard footsteps outside. Heavy ones. Not animal-like, but cautious. Just slow, deliberate steps crunching at the brittle ground. I froze. Then the footsteps stopped, and the tent zipper started moving. I shot up and yelled, thinking it was Matt screaming at me. But when I unzipped the tent and looked out, knowing I was just a wide open lake bed underneath. Empty. Matt's tent was zipped shut. Jay's too. I stood outside for a while, flashlight off, listening. In the distance, I heard scraping. The same sound I'd imagined earlier at the edge of the hole. The next morning, we found prints. Not boot prints. Bare feet. Dozens of them. All leading from the center of the lake bed straight toward our camp, but not away from it. We packed quickly. Jay said she felt sick. Kept rubbing her arms like something was crawling on her skin. Matt laughed it off. Said it was probably a prank. Maybe some other campers messing with us. But there were no cars for miles. We would have seen their headlights. As we left, we passed the hole again. There were fresh drag marks now, leading into it, like someone had been pulled backwards by the end. We didn't stop. 2 days later, Jay stopped answering my text. Matt said she flew home early and blocked both ways. I haven't seen her since. About a month after that, Matt disappeared. His roommate said he never came home from a solo camping trip. Guess where he went? Dry Lake. Search teams found his car parked beside the basin. They found his tent, his gear, even his cooler, still full of food. They didn't find that. But they did find a hole. Bigger this time. Wider. And in the dirt around it, more bare footprints. Going out in every direction.